Hey, Osyka Youth Group, Brother Reed here. This is the evening message for December the 6th. Again, we're not going to be meeting tonight as a youth group. We'll be in the sanctuary with the adults, but I encourage you to come anyway if you can. And anyway, this is the message for Sunday evening for the youth group. Finishing up Colossians chapter 4 and the book of Colossians, starting in verse 7 through 18, it says, "As to all my affairs, Titius, our beloved brother and faithful servant and fellow bondservant in the Lord, will bring you information. For I have sent him to you for this very purpose, that you may know about our circumstances, and that he may encourage your hearts. And with him, Onesimus, our faithful and beloved brother, who is one with your number. They will inform you about the whole situation here. Aristarchus, my fellow prisoner, sends you his greetings, and also Barnabas's cousin Mark, about whom you received instructions. If he comes to you, welcome him. And also Jesus, who is called Justus. These are the only fellow workers for the kingdom of God who are from the circumcision, and they have proved to be an encouragement to me. Epaphras, who is one of your number, a bondslave of Jesus Christ, sends you his greetings, always laboring earnestly for you in his prayers, that you may stand before and fully stand perfect and fully assured in all the will of God. For I testify for him that he has a deep concern for you and for those who are in Laodicea and Hierapolis. Luke, the beloved physician, sends you his greetings, and also Demas. Greet the brethren who are in Laodicea, and also Nympha, and the church that is in her house. When this letter is read among you, have it also read in the church of the Laodiceans. And you, for your part, read my letter that is coming from Laodicea. Say to Archippus, take heed to the ministry which you have received in the Lord, that you may fulfill it. I, Paul, write this greeting with my own hand. Remember my imprisonment. Grace be with you." So the main thing that I want you to notice here is Paul is listing this group of people. And, we've talked about before, if the Bible was being written today, where would you be in it? Would you be, and here's the big question, would you be listed like these people are listed? And that should be our goal, that we would be named off like Paul is naming these. He names this one. It says, "As to my affairs, Titius, our beloved brother and faithful servant and fellow bondservant in the Lord, will bring you information." And then he goes to this other one, Onesimus, our faithful and beloved brother. And then Aristarchus, my fellow prisoner. And then Barnabas's cousin Mark. And then it says Justus. It says, "These are the only fellow workers for the kingdom of God who are from the circumcision, and they have proved to be an encouragement to me." And then Epaphras, a bond slave of Jesus Christ, sends you his greeting. And he's always laboring earnestly for you in his prayers, that you may stand perfect and fully assured in all the will of God. And then let's see, Luke, the beloved physician, sends you his greeting, and also Demas. And then let's see, well, that's the only ones I want to look at right now, and then we're going to talk about some other things there. But think of Paul in his situation, and he's naming off these guys And he calls them faithful servants and fellow bond servants and beloved brothers. And um, this one, it says, a bond slave of Jesus Christ, and he sends you his greetings, always laboring earnestly for you in his prayers, that you may stand perfect and fully assured in all the will of God. So these guys are, as according to Paul, I would say he's probably calling them his equals. I mean, he says fellow prisoners and fellow bond slaves and faithful servants and fellow bond servants. I mean, that should be our goal, that we would be listed among these people. I mean, that I would love to, if the Bible was, if I was living in this time, if I had, if I was either in this time when the Bible was written, or if the Bible was written today. Either way you want to think about that, I would love to be listed as somebody like that. I mean, you'd want to be even listed even higher if possible. You'd want to be one of the first 12 that Jesus chose, or listed like Paul. Be in place of Paul because of all his, all the things he did for the Bible. All the New Testament writings, the majority is written by Paul, and I mean, to be listed among any of those would be an honor and a privilege. And these are just fellow workers. It has titled at the chapter 4, and these guys are, Paul is. I mean, put it this way: he's not naming everybody. I guarantee there was more people that Paul come in contact with, but these guys, Tysius, Aristarchus, Mark, Justus, Luke, what's the other one's name? Epaphras. I mean, those guys really. I mean, I would love to be listed with them. Thought of as one of those guys that you don't want to stand out from the crowd as just to be standing out. But I doubt those guys were looking for. I mean, they wasn't doing it, or Paul would have noticed it, and he would have made note of it, because he has called some people out about the way they were acting, the way they were behaving. But Paul lists these guys and talks about them being faithful and fellow bond servants, and how they, they're standing out, but they're for real. That's the big thing. That's the key there, I believe, is that they're real people. They're not fakers. They're not just trying to get the light for the recognition. I mean, they're probably behind the scenes. I mean, Paul points out different ones, and he makes known their names, but then he reminds, it says, Barnabas' cousin Mark, about whom you received instruction, if he comes to you, welcome him. So there wasn't there. I don't think they were well known in a sense of like Paul was. They were kind of behind the scenes, but they were faithful and they were hard workers, and according to the gospel. But they still, Paul recognized them, and Paul made note of their faithfulness, and he just wanted to let people know that it says there in one thing, it says, he says something about, let me find that, Epaphras, in verse 12, it says, Epaphras, who is one of your number, a bond slave of Jesus Christ, sends you his greeting. So I think that would be one of your number would be, one of your church members, one of your own people. Um, and he just, he don't just say Ephraim, who is one of your number. Um, you know, he don't just leave it at that. He reminds the people, and he makes it known that Ephraim, a bond slave of Jesus Christ, sends you his greetings. And he could have left it at that. But he goes on and says, he's always laboring earnestly for you in his prayers, that you may stand perfect and fully assured in all the will of God. And that's the other thing that I want you to notice there. He's not just praying that, that their needs would be met, or they would be blessed, or they would be healed, or all those things that we normally hear prayers for. He's praying that they may stand perfect and fully assured in all the will of God. Not just part of the will of God, but all the will of God, that they would stand perfect and fully assured in all the will of God. And I think that's what we should pray for one another. There was a prayer, a comment that Paul made. Was that in Colossians? I don't remember if that was in Colossians. Right off, some of these books are kind of small. Yeah, that was in Colossians. That, he wanted them to grow and all wisdom. Yeah, that's in chapter 1 of Colossians. So, here's this guy that's pretty much acting like Paul. He's praying for these people that they wouldn't, just receive, God's grace and mercy, but that they would be able to stand, and that's what he says there, that you may stand perfect and fully assured in all the will of God. And then he says, for I testify for him that he has a deep concern for you and for those who are in Laodicea and Hierapolis. So here's the thing. Why would he have this concern that he needs to pray for these people, that they would stand firm and fully assured in all the will of God? Again, when Paul says things, or if, like according to this guy's worried about these people, he had reasons to be. They may have been faithful in some things, but he wanted them to be faithful in all things, just like Paul did. That they had learned some things. In chapter 1, it says, for this, in chapter 1, verse 9, it says, for this reason also, since the day we heard of it, we have not ceased to pray for you and to ask that you may be filled with the knowledge of his will and all spiritual wisdom and understanding, so that you will walk in a manner worthy of the Lord, to please him in all respects, bearing fruit in every good work, and increasing in the knowledge of God, and being strengthened with all power according to his glorious might, for the attaining of all steadfastness and patience joyously, giving thanks to the Father who has qualified us to share in the inheritance of the saints in light. So here's a guy that sounds a lot like Paul, and I think that's why Paul is probably making note of him. He's one of them, because he says that he is one of your number. But he is, it says, for I testify for him that he has a deep concern for you and for those who are in Laodicea and Hierapolis. So this guy has a concern. He has he's worrying about them. Again, they were probably doing good, and we saw that in verse 1, that they had, since we heard of your faith in Jesus Christ, in verse 4 of chapter 1, and the love which you have for all the saints. But he also knows that they're not perfect, and he prays that one day they will be. That should be that prayer in the front that I said, I pray for everyone, and I hope they pray for me the same way. Here's a guy that's doing that. Ephraim, Epaphras. I guess that's how you say it, Ephraim. he has this concern. It says, "For I testify for him that he has a deep concern for you and for those who are in Laodicea, that they would be able to stand perfect and fully assured in all the will of God." Then it goes on down. It says, "Greet the brethren who are in Laodicea, and also Nympha, and the church that is in her house. When this letter is read among you, have it also read in the church of the Laodiceans. And you, for your part, read my letter that is coming from Laodicea." So it's the same thing as, we're reading through these from Romans all the way through. From the book of Acts, we saw the first church. Now we're seeing, the after effects, and we're seeing these Paul's writings to these different churches. And, some people look at this and it's like, well, that was sent to the Thessalonians, that was sent to the Colossians, that was sent to this one, that was sent to that one. But we're reading it, and we should be getting something out of it in the effect of it should reach us too. It should make us take notice. And that's what Paul says to them, is that it says, when this letter is read among you, have it also read to the church in Laodiceans, because they need to hear it too. And you're going to be getting a letter from them that was written to them, and you need to read it for yourself, because you need to hear what they were told. So when we look at all these books, it wasn't just written for them, it was written for us. It was written for us to take notice of and to learn from, and to just make note in our minds and our hearts that we need to be praying for one another, as this guy was, Ephraim. He had concern for these people. We should have concern for one another. Even if, we can look at people and say, well, so-and-so, they're at church every time the doors are open. They do this, they do that. But we still should have prayer for them. We should still say, I know so-and-so is doing good. I can see their life is on the right path, but I still want to pray for them, because I know they're not perfect, and I know that they need to be encouraged. I know that they need to be, what was the word? One of them, it says something about not just encouraged, but the other word, let's see, I know we just read it in another part. I don't see it, I don't have it highlighted. But anyway, we need to have somebody that tells us, good job and stuff, but we also have to have somebody alongside of us that says, hey, as a Christian, you shouldn't be doing that, to hold us accountable. There's a good way of saying it. And I believe that's what this guy, he's in verse 12. It says, Ephraim, who is one of your number, a bond slave of Jesus Christ, sends you his greetings. And he's always laboring earnestly for you in his prayers, that you may stand perfect and fully assured in all the will of God. So he sends him his greetings. So, that's hey, how you doing? Nice to talk to you. All these things, kind of a pick me up word, I guess, because all these other ones are sending greetings. Aristarchus, my fellow prisoner, in verse 10, it says, sends you his greetings. And also Barnabas' cousin Mark. All these people are sending these greetings. And then you have this one he's sending the greeting also, but then he is earnestly praying. He's earnest. It says he always laboring earnestly for you in his prayers, that you may stand perfect and fully assured in all the will of God. And then Paul says that I testify for him that he has a deep concern for you and for those who are in Laodicea and Hierapolis. So we can encourage each other, but we also have to have this prayer that God would make known his will for them, and that they would be faithful, and that they would be able to stand, as this says, be able to stand perfect and fully assured in all the will of God. It's more than just saying you're a Christian. It's being a Christian. You know, the first Christians didn't go around saying they were. The people saw their life, and they looked at them and they said, that person has to be a Christian. You know, even here's a little change of storyline, I guess. But remember when Peter was confronted after Jesus was arrested and all that, and he was questioned. You know, he was asked, you know, you're one of them. Now, there may have been something about the way Peter was dressed. It may have been something about that they just kind of recognized him from going town to town with Jesus, but maybe it was something about Peter's lifestyle. Maybe, and now I'm just throwing this out there because it don't really say how they recognized him, but maybe it was because of the way the other people were acting when the servant girl came along and she sees this guy kind of standing out from the crowd and being different, that she said, oh, wait a second, aren't you one of those Christian guys? Aren't you one of them? Now, he goes on and denies that, but to try to almost blend in. But it's the same kind of situation here that, you know, we're supposed to be different. And to be different, we need, first of all, we need people to encourage us to be different. And we also need people to hold us accountable to be different. And I believe that's what these guys were doing. They were being different. And you can see that they were being different because of what Paul is calling them, beloved brothers and faithful servants and fellow bond slaves and you know, fellow prisoner and all these things that goes along with behind their name after they're mentioned. But it don't just stop there, especially with Epaphras, is that, you know, he is one of them, a bond slave of Jesus Christ, but then he goes beyond that. And this guy, not only does he want to be a bond slave and a servant for Christ, but he wants all these other people to be. And he's laboring in his prayer life that they would be able to stand perfect and fully assured in all the will of God. That's the way we should be. That's the way Paul was. And we see that because Paul was, he was leading by example. You had these other people that had come into contact with Paul, and they were seeing how he was living, and they were seeing how he was, his prayer life, and seeing all the things that Paul was doing, his deeds, and it was rubbing off on them. So that is my hope and prayer for me, that my life, as messed up as it is, I'm nowhere close to being perfect, don't get me wrong, but I hope that my life does one of two things. Either it causes someone else that's not a Christian, or that is a Christian and they're not living like a Christian, to look at me and say, you know what, I need to start being more like him. Or look at me and say, you know what, I need to have a talk with him because his life needs to be, you know, the bar needs to be raised. He needs to step up a little higher and be more of an example. And that should be I believe that should be all of our prayers, is that we should lead by example. We should be someone that other people will look up to, but we should also be people to realize that we're not perfect, and we should be striving, as Paul mentioned before, striving for the mark, running the race, not satisfied with where you are. And I believe that's the way Paul was, and that's the way this guy was. He wasn't satisfied with the Colossians where they were. He wanted them to go beyond. He wanted them to get out in the deep waters, not just stay comfortable as Christians. So, again, we're not going to be meeting tonight as a youth group. Wednesday night we will. So, guys, let your friends know. 6 o'clock, we'll be in the fellowship hall, and we will start the book of Thessalonians. All right, guys, talk to you later.